Welcome to another episode of The Morning After, episode 26. I'm your host, Jared Smith. We appreciate you joining us today for what should be a really fun episode. Probably going to be a shorter episode than usual. Again, I'm starting to get more topical with these. Don't have as many things to get to today as we have one more week until Selection Sunday. The NCAA Tournament is top of mind. We will talk a little bit of college basketball today. I have a hot take about the conference tournaments as we are starting to see the mid-majors crown their champions, and we saw some crazy upsets over the weekend. Also, the NFL. Legal tampering. What's that? Well, it starts on Monday, and free agency begins Wednesday, and we will start to really formulate our opinions on these rosters. I think this is the first week where I don't want to say I'm really paying attention to the NFL. Let's be honest. We're paying attention to the NFL 24/7, 365. The league has demanded our attention all year round. But this is the first week where rosters start to take shape, and we can really start to formulate opinions on what the needs are for each team heading into the NFL draft, which is a very important season, lying season, as we like to call it here on the show. And that is where we begin tonight. The legal tampering period, it's one of my favorite oxymorons in all of sports. It's when teams can start to tinker with players on other teams and players that are uncalled for, unclaimed, and then we'll start to really get those signings to become official later in the week. We've already seen a bunch of trades happen, and that's really where I want to start tonight. A couple of major trades took place over the weekend. Of course, Max Crosby being the big one. So the Ravens trade for Max Crosby, a massive deal, first-round pick this year and first-round pick next year, goes from Baltimore to Las Vegas. Why is that important? Well, now the Raiders hold 2 of the top 14 picks in this year's draft. They're going to take Fernando Mendoza with the first overall pick. I think that's the worst-kept secret in the NFL. But now that 14th pick becomes ammunition, and we'll see what the Raiders do with that. My guess is they go defense, and we'll see just what their roster looks like. You've got to have a rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. I'm hearing that they still want to bring in a veteran quarterback. They don't want to start Mendoza from day one. Don't really think it matters. I think the Raiders are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL next season, regardless of who's playing quarterback. And the Max Crosby trade signifies the real final domino to fall as the rebuild now fully underway in Vegas. On the other side of the coin, it's always tough to gauge these trades, right? The first reaction anytime I see one of these major blockbuster trades take place is who wins, who loses, what's the compensation, right? What's the price? Because Max Crosby right now on the surface, one of the best defensive players in the NFL, declining production over the last couple years. You could say maybe age, injury is the reason for it. You could also maybe say he's on a bad team, and you just don't necessarily have the best stats when you're playing for a team that's consistently behind, right? If you're a pass rusher, if you're consistently behind, the team's running it more, that the offenses that you're facing are running it more, so your pass rushing ability is a little bit hampered. And I just think in general, it's tough to really gauge where Max Crosby is based off of his last 2 seasons in Vegas, because they were not very good seasons in terms of the win-loss record. I don't know how good of a deal this is for the Ravens. I think if the Ravens return to their prior glory next season and they're a playoff team, well, then I think it's a pretty decent deal. But if the Ravens miss the playoffs again, or if they're a fringe playoff team and that first-round pick in 2027 is in the top 20, well, then you can make the argument that the Raiders have the better end of this bargain. Of course, Baltimore with a brand-new coaching staff next year. Jesse Minter takes over as the head coach. Declan Doyle, former Bears play caller or offensive coordinator, technically Ben Johnson was still calling plays last year, but Declan Doyle was the quote-unquote offensive coordinator. He takes over as the new offensive coordinator in Baltimore, and Anthony Weaver with that 3-4 defense will take over as the defensive signal caller. So a brand new defense for Max Crosby to learn, brand new roster, brand new regime, and we'll see what the Ravens look like next year. I do think the ceiling is certainly high for Lamar Jackson, no doubt, but I would say the floor is pretty low with the injury concerns and all of the things we've seen from Lamar over the last few years. So I don't think I don't believe the Ravens will miss the playoffs next year, but it's certainly a possibility. And if they do, then I would lean that this deal is probably better for Vegas. The other trade that really intrigued me last week was the trade for Trent McDuffie. Of course, the Chiefs, very aggressive with that trade, trading their best corner to the Rams. They get a first-round pick this year, a fifth-round pick this year, a sixth-round pick this year, a third-round pick next year. And I know what you're thinking. That is a lot for a really good cornerback in Trent McDuffie, but that's a lot of draft capital to trade. I think this is the rare scenario. First of all, you don't see two contenders trade very often, right? And I know the Chiefs had a really bad year in 2025, but that was a comedy of errors, right? You had the injury to Mahomes. You had a lot of bad luck with, some tight games. And I do think this is the rare scenario where both teams kind of got what they wanted. I thought the Rams were a piece away last year, right? The NFC Championship game between Seattle and the Rams, that was the Super Bowl. The Rams were very close to winning that game. You could make the argument that they were a defensive play away from winning that game. And now you get McDuffie, who's one of the better corners in the league. And you have to milk every last drop you can out of Matthew Stafford, because let's be honest, he's not getting any younger. I know what 40 feels like, and he's getting close to that mark. And I think you look at Stafford and you look at what this roster is, and they are close. So the Rams kind of back in that F them picks mode with GM Les Snead, and they're pushing all their chips to the middle here, hoping to get the most out of McDuffie and Stafford and the rest of this roster in 2026. Now, for the Chiefs, I really like this deal for the Chiefs. I mean, I think the Chiefs have a lot of really talented players on their roster defensively. Last year, you had a couple of corners that I think really stepped up. And I'm very excited to see what the Chiefs can do next year, right? Jalen Watson only allowed one touchdown over the last 2 years. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. You got Brian Cook. You've got Joshua Williams. These are guys that are really, really good players in the secondary. And now you give the Chiefs a second first-round pick. I know it's at the end of the first round. They have 9. I think the Rams are 28 or 29. So you've got 2 picks in the first round this year. We'll see what Brent Veach does. You might package those picks and move up in the draft, get a really star player. You might stick and pick and take someone at 9, might go defense at 9, might go offense at 29. We'll see. I'm very intrigued to see what the Chiefs do. And if you're going to ask me, do you trust Steve Spagnuolo to take a young roster with some still very good players on it and get the most out of it without Trent McDuffie? I would say the answer to that question is yes. So very excited to see what Kansas City does next year. And obviously, we think the Rams are going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL. In fact, I think with this trade for McDuffie, and I don't want to say Seattle takes a step back, but I would say the Rams are the team to beat in the NFL heading into 2026. I know we got a long way to go. Still a lot of roster construction and preseason and all that stuff, the draft. We'll see what these teams do. But if you ask me right now, gun to my head, I have to pick one team in 2026 to win the Super Bowl. If Matthew Stafford stays healthy, I think it might be the Rams. The other intriguing deal that took place last week, the Bears traded DJ Moore to the Bills for a second-round pick. Buffalo also gets a fifth-round pick in return. Another one of those intriguing trades where I actually think it benefited both teams. Buffalo desperately needed a receiver. Of course, Joe Brady has familiarity with DJ Moore back from his days with Carolina, so you would think that transition would be seamless. The Bears get some salary cap relief, and let's be honest, Chicago's got a ton of weapons in their stable. Luther Burden, I think, was starting to show signs of breaking out in his rookie year. And we obviously know Colston Loveland is an absolute stud. Rome Odunze, another player that I'm very excited about. And, of course, Caleb Williams starting to take some steps forward with Ben Johnson as the signal caller. So I'm very excited about what Chicago can do now with an extra draft pick in their back pocket and a little bit more salary cap relief. DJ Moore's numbers have fallen off a little bit over the last couple years. I still think he can be a productive receiver in the right system. And again, Buffalo was just desperately in need of a alpha in their receiving room. And I do think they get that with DJ Moore. Regardless of how productive he is, he's a veteran. He's a yackable receiver, which is what Joe Brady and the offense wants to do. I think it's what Josh Allen needs, someone who's consistent, someone who's reliable. And I do think Buffalo still, the window is very much open with Josh Allen. And again, you can see this is, again, one of those times of year over the next month leading up to the draft where you gain information about what the team's philosophy is. And for example, a team like Kansas City, they aren't in rebuilding mode, but they are in retooling mode. And when you trade away one of your best players on the defensive side, it does kind of show your hand that, you feel like you're still able to win a Super Bowl because you have Patrick Mahomes, but you need to make some tweaks. You're not quite happy with the depth of your roster. So they're collecting a lot of draft picks and they're trying to let Brett Veach do his thing. Where on the other side of the coin, a team like the Rams, giving up all those picks, pushing all their chips into the middle, you could tell this is a do or die year for this Rams team. So based on what these moves are, based on the macro direction of the teams and what types of moves they're making, you can tell where the franchise is heading into 2026. Like the Raiders, full rebuild, zero hope of making the playoffs, winning a Super Bowl. And that's blatantly obvious by trading away their best player or the best defensive player. So again, use all of these. I don't think you should be betting on where these players are going to be going. I think the draft is a very tough event to bet on this far out, but you can start to stack chips in your corner of, I think this team is going to look at this type of player in the draft based on what they do now over the next month. The Raiders, great example. Like they probably are going to take a defensive player with the 14th overall pick based off of trading away Max Crosby. The Chiefs, probably going to take a cornerback at some point in the first few rounds because they just traded away their best corner, even though they do have a lot of young corners still on their roster. Based on what the teams do now, it gives you a little bit of insight into the direction and the vision of each general manager and each front office. So very exciting time in the NFL. Put your notifications on for the Schepters and the Rappaports and the Pelisseros and all those guys. They're going to be breaking a lot of news over the next week. It's going to come fast and furious. I'm not going to get into which, player I think is the best fit for each team. I think that, frankly, that content is useless. Just tell me where each player is going, and then I'll react to it as we get that information because I'm not going to do a lot of prep work on where I think teams should be looking because I'm not in those rooms. I don't know what they need. So I used to do that. I used to write a lot of articles and, generate a lot of thoughts about, I think Alec Pierce, of course, great example. He's the one star receiver is probably going to get the most noise. Mike Evans, another guy that you're probably going to hear his name called at some point next week. I have no idea where those guys are going to go. Kyler Murray, right? We think the Cardinals are going to cut him. We think the Vikings might be a point. I don't know where those players are going to land. I'm guessing. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not an insider. But once we get that information, I will absorb it, and I will tell you what I think that means for each team. Again, that's the purpose of this show. It's called The Morning After, not the morning before. I'll do some predictions when I feel the need to. But when it comes to the roster movement and player movement, we talked about this in the draft combine topic last week. I don't believe everything I hear. Like I hear, this team's looking at this player. This team, it's a good fit for him. You have to consider the source of this information. It's coming from the insiders who are being tipped off by the agents and the teams, which means that information is compromised. And actually, speaking of that, I don't know if you're familiar of this Ricky Dog story, right? There's this Twitter account out there, Ricky, I don't know what the exact handle is, Ricky Scoops. And he's one of the few quote-unquote insiders. He's just a random guy. We don't even know who he is. It could be probably like somewhere who's working in the lower levels of one of the agencies, actually posting information that is very useful, tipping off the public on where teams might be going, what trade partners are kind of getting pushed together. Well, that Twitter account was under a lot of heat over the last week, and it got shut down because it was leaking too much information. So that is a perfect example of why the actual sources that are in the know don't want the real information out there because it puts their position in a compromised position. It puts them in a weakened position if the actual real intel is out there available to the public. So that is why it is important for you the public to be highly skeptical of any inside information you get from these reporters. And I tweeted this last week, right? We did the story about the combine and how, it's lying season. And I quote tweeted that and I said, the Will Levis saga in 2023 is the perfect example of this. Everybody thought the Colts were taking him at 4, including Peter Schrager, who, no knock on Peter Schrager. He actually replied to my tweet. Thank you for replying to my tweet, Peter. But Peter kind of got pushed in the wrong direction. I said he got duped. He pushed back on that. I'll let you, the public, decide whether he got duped or not. But he got fed information from the Colts that they were taking Will Levis with the 4th overall pick. And he was right and he was wrong. He was right because they were looking at a quarterback. They ended up taking Anthony Richardson. But they were wrong about which quarterback they were taking. And then, of course, the Reddit saga where people thought he was going to get taken 1st overall because there was some story on Reddit leaked about it. But that is a perfect example of why the insiders are not always given the best information at this time of year, because it doesn't benefit the teams to leak who they are actually looking at. It puts them in a weakened position if that information actually becomes public. And that's why that Ricky Scoops Twitter account got shut down, because in reality, the actual true information doesn't benefit the team. So they're not going to leak it. So not saying it's wrong 100% of the time, but more often than not, I would say what you're hearing from the insiders is not the full story, because it doesn't benefit the teams to actually reveal what they are doing and who they are looking at. It puts them in a weakened position from a negotiating standpoint. Great example of this. If you think, if you know, if you're team X and you're trying to trade with team Y, and then all of a sudden team Z comes into the equation and starts making a better offer, well, wouldn't you go behind team Z's back and say, hey, listen, we're really interested in this player, but we don't like the offer. So how about we put a story out there that team X is interested in this player? Then all of a sudden, Team Z is going to get scared that they might lose the player and they might up the offer. So that's where a lot of this strategery, as Will Ferrell said in Saturday Night Live, right, when he was doing the George W. Bush impression, that's where a lot of this information comes from. It's coming directly from the agents or the teams, and a lot of times they are trying to mislead other teams into thinking they like or don't like a player to either get them off the scent or to up a trade offer. So, moral of the story, just be skeptical. Don't believe all the insider information you hear. There is not a ton of value in getting ahead of this stuff. I know you can bet on which player is going to go to which team, but you're not going to be able to get down that much money on it, and it's not something that the professionals really look at too much. So I just think you're better off spending your time and energy handicapping things where you actually can get a little bit of value, can get a little bit of an edge, and then once it is revealed where said player is going to, well, then you can react accordingly and formulate your opinion about said team, and that is what we are going to do on this show. So very excited about the legal tampering period, very excited about free agency, very excited about all the trades. We will get back to you next week. We'll have a full assessment on all the big moves and what it means for each team and what that maybe means for the draft as we move forward. All right, let's transition into college basketball. I have two things to get to in college basketball, and then we'll wrap things up. So the big story in college basketball over the weekend was Miami, Ohio. Let's clap it up. Clap it up for the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. They completed, and this game was wild. I don't know if you watched this game. I think it was on Saturday night against their in-state rival, Ohio. On the road, they won in overtime. The game was in triple digits before it even got to overtime. I think it was like 102 heading into overtime. Miami, Ohio pulled off the win, completed a 31-0 regular season. A remarkable feat. I did a exercise on this where if you bet $100, right? Let's say you started, and no one does this. I had one person reply on X like, this is useless information. I know, but it's a fun thought exercise, and it's a fun It's fun. To me, it was interesting. I don't know. I mean, I know it obviously isn't actionable or useless or useful in any way, but I enjoyed doing it. So let's say you started with $100 and you bet Miami of Ohio money line in every game this season. And to be fair, of the 31 games, they only played 28 of them against like opponents that actually had a money line. Like I think they were either lesser opponents, either D2 opponents, or just the spread was so big there was no money line. So 28 games that were bettable on the money line for Miami of Ohio this year. If you took $100 and rolled it over, right? You take $100, you bet them on the money line, you win it, you take all the winnings, you roll it over again, so on and so forth, all the way to the end of the rainbow. You would have ended up with $748,000, actually $748,849 spot 31. So $748,849.31, all from a $100 initial money line bet on Miami of Ohio way back in early November. So congratulations to the Redhawks. They are 31-0. However, there is still a debate going on right now, not only amongst sports media, but sports Twitter, on whether or not they are an NCAA tournament team if they don't win their conference tournament. So right now, currently, they're ranked 91st in KenPom, a 31-0 team ranked 91st in KenPom, 77th in Torvik. Now their WAB, what the fuck is WAB? Wins above bubble, which is something that the committee looks at very strongly when determining at-large teams. Their WAB is in the top 30. So I think that helps them, obviously. The strength of schedule is way at the bottom. They've not played many good opponents this year. The one good opponent they played was Akron. They did win that game, though. And there is a debate going on that if they don't win the MAC tournament, whether or not they should get in the NCAA tournament. Well, hold the frickin' phone right here. If you go 31-0 during the regular season, I don't care if you play the Sisters of the Poor, you deserve a spot in the NCAA tournament. Period. End of story. End of discussion. Even if Miami of Ohio loses their first MAC tournament game, I think they play UMass next week, I don't care. They deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Why the fuck are we even playing the regular season games if you can go 31-0 and not get a spot in the NCAA tournament? It makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, the irony with all this, Miami of Ohio isn't even favored to win the MAC tournament. They're actually like plus 250. Akron, who has the highest power rating of all of the MAC teams, is odds on, minus 110 at BetMGM as we record this Sunday night, to win the MAC tourney. Wild to me how much, I guess you want to call it disrespect, but to be fair, Miami of Ohio played nobody during the regular season. They scheduled nobody in the non-conference, and the MAC had a relatively down year outside of Akron. So it will be very interesting to see how the committee responds if Miami of Ohio doesn't win their conference tournament. Now, they could make all of this moot by winning the conference tournament, getting the automatic bid, and then, of course, they would be guaranteed a spot in the NCAA tournament. But my take, even if they lose their first MAC tournament game, I believe the Redhawks deserve a spot in the NCAA tournament for doing something that is truly remarkable in today's sporting world. An undefeated college basketball regular season. I mean, this is so rare. And even if you play bad teams, like for example, what happened in the MVC over the weekend, number 1 seed Belmont, one of the best teams, frankly, even on the at-large bubble was even getting some consideration. They were a double-digit favorite, lost in the first round. I think college basketball is so volatile. The three-point shot, you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. To win night in and night out and to overcome all of the adversity over such a long period of time is such a remarkable feat. It deserves recognition. It deserves at least a spot in a 68-team field. So I hope the committee does the right thing. If Miami of Ohio does not win the MAC tournament next week, and by the time we come back on the air next Sunday night, we will know the answer to that question because it'll be Selection Sunday and we'll have the bracket. But I think Miami of Ohio has done enough already to punch a ticket to the big dance. The other intriguing story that took place this week in college basketball, and this is what prompted my hot take. So quietly, Navy was having a really good year in college hoops. I think they were 26-7 heading into Sunday, where they were facing BU, Boston University, at home in the Patriot League Tournament. I believe it was the semifinal round. So the game was tied late. Navy hit a field goal to go up by 2, and BU hit a wild, almost half-court buzzer beater to beat Navy and advance to the championship game. And it prompted me to tweet out that conference tournaments are a terrible way to determine who goes to the NCAA tournament from a one-bid mid-major league. And I believe the regular season champion should be awarded the automatic berth. Oh boy, did I get some pushback from this on social media. I see both sides to this argument, but I believe that I'm on the right side of it, because I believe that the true test of a good team, the true test of who the best team in a smaller league is, should be determined by a longer sample size. And I use gambling as a great example of this. If you are looking to follow a handicapper, to tail someone's picks, are you going to tail an unproven handicapper who's on a 4-game winning streak? You know, they put out the tweet, 4-game heater with like 7 different emojis. Or are you going to follow a handicapper who has a proven track record of long-term success over a full season or multiple seasons? The answer is obvious. You're going to follow the handicapper that's gone 55% over a 5-year period instead of the one handicapper that's had a one good week of bets. Because the true test of talent, the true test of if you're good at something, can you do it over a long haul? Anybody can get lucky for a week. Can you do it over a long period of time? Now, the pushback to this argument is it ruins the conference tournaments, which it absolutely does. It sucks the excitement out of them. It makes them, frankly, irrelevant. I'm okay with that, because I think we've reached a point now in college sports where getting the best teams into the playoff is more important than the most exciting format. We're seeing this in the college football playoff, where the mid-majors, right, they had a 12-0 year, James Madison, someone like that has a 12-0 year, undefeated season, gets elevated into the 12-team playoff when they really have no business being in the field. Boston University, now frankly, Navy's not exactly a great team either. I'm sure they would be a lower seed and they'd probably get their ass kicked in the first round. But they had an unbelievable year in the Patriot League. I think they went 17-1 in conference play. But they are not going to be able to represent the Patriot League in the NCAA tournament because of some silly format that rewards short-term success over a long-term sample. And I just think that's not the way to determine who the best team is in a smaller league. Now, does that mean that I'm going to get my way and the conferences are going to get rid of the conference tournaments? No, of course not. Why? Because they make money. They put them on TV, they generate revenue from them, and it adds games, it adds product, it adds content. It's money. And that wins out today over trying to get the best team. That's just the way it is. And I'm okay with that. Like I've accepted that as the reality. But that doesn't mean I can't have the opinion that you are actually hurting your league's chances of putting the best team in the field. Because not all the time, right? We saw North Dakota State, best team in the Summit League, win their league conference tournament over the weekend. Like, good for them. Bison are great. They deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, even if they didn't win their conference tournament, because they were the best team in the Summit League. But they also had to win, I think it was 3 or 4 games in the Summit League to get to the big dance. The conference tournaments are not a good way of determining who the best team in the league is. It's a good way of determining who the hottest team is that week. It's a very exciting product, but it doesn't do the job of putting the best team from that league in the NCAA tournament. That's just my opinion. You can disagree with it if you want. I had a lot of people on social media say, I don't know ball. And it was like a perfect kind of example of why we have lost the art of respectful debate. If you ever, and I had some people this week, I mean, I've been getting absolutely hammered on social media over the last week. Like people, I don't know if it's something in the water, Mercury in retrograde, I don't know. But the negativity I've received on social media from random people over the last week has like ratcheted up 1,000%. And I'm perfectly okay with people debating me on social media. If I come out with an opinion and you say, I disagree and here is why, I will respond to you. Even if you're a random Twitter troll, I will respond to you. It's the people who criticize me, put me down for having the opinion. That is what I believe we have lost in society. Twitter and social media is great for so many things. Disseminating information, connecting people, bringing people together. I believe what it's ruined in our society is the art of respectful debate, where instead of actually trying to have a conversation with somebody, you're just trying to come up with a snarky one-liner that's going to get retweeted by somebody and get you some attention. Like, we've just lost the art of respectful debate, which is ironically what brought our whole country together to begin with. Like, that's the whole point of America and freedom and democracy, is to have an opinion. Someone else has an opinion. You debate. You come together. We view each other's opponents as the enemy now. Like, if you're on one side of an argument, I'm on the other side of an argument. Instead of debating the argument and debating the merits of that opinion, you just put down the other person for having the opinion, right? We see this in the political world all the time. There are people out there who really believe that people who voted for Donald Trump are fascists and Nazis. Like, it's the most obscene thing ever. Like, for example, Adolf Hitler had a dog. Does that mean that everybody who has dogs is a Nazi? No, of course not. It means that he had a dog and you have a dog and you both have a dog for different reasons. And you both also have very different beliefs about other things. But we have lost the art of being able to respectfully debate someone in this country. And I believe social media is a big reason why for that. And it continues to rear its ugly head every single week. I mean, it's actually crazy just how gross some of the people on this planet have become, trying to put others down and bring others down to their level. I think you could tell a lot about someone based off of the way they carry themselves on social media. Are they constantly criticizing and bringing and putting other people down, or are they trying to actually educate, inform, and lift people up? That's a great way to tell what someone's personality is. So I urge all of you to be a little bit more respectful, a little bit more open-minded about the way you approach responding and replying to other people on social media. Because if you reply to me respectfully, even if you disagree with me, I will engage in debate with you. I think it's actually one of my favorite things to do, because I think debating the issues is how we actually come face to face on things. And I said this on last week's show. I think we're much closer together than the media makes us appear to be. Like, most people are kind of in the middle on most issues. They lean left, they lean right, but they see the other side, and they don't believe that the other side of the argument is the enemy and is a fascist or a Nazi, or, they just disagree on a certain issue. And when you actually come face to face and start having respectful debate with people, you see their humanity, and you lose that enemy, opposition way of thinking. So I encourage all of you to reply to my posts. First of all, it gets the engagement numbers up. Second of all, I encourage all of you to reply respectfully and engage with me in debate. I'm not opposed to being told I'm wrong about something, but tell me why. Don't just call me an idiot or say you don't know ball. Tell me why. And then I'll reply, and I'll tell you what my side of it is, and we can continue that debate. But I do think in general, social media has just become a cesspool of trolls, and it's really hard to determine who the real people are and who the bots are and who the people that are just trying to start shit and mess with you. So excited to continue to see where the conference tournaments shake out next week. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the show on social media, on YouTube. We're starting to get some good traction on X and Instagram and TikTok, and all of those platforms are free and available to you to engage with the content, to absorb the content. Of course, the Patreon is where you can find all of my picks. A lot of picks coming over the next few weeks with March Madness. We'll get into baseball, nerfy, yerfy, all that stuff, props. So $20 a month, 7 days for free on Patreon. All of the links are in the description of the YouTube video for those of you that are absorbing the content there. And, of course, you can also listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. The morning after, episode 26. I'm your host, Jared Smith. I appreciate you tuning in. Short but sweet tonight as we get ready for Selection Sunday next week and the NFL free agency period. Should be a lot of fun. We'll catch you on next week's show.